We are back. Week 5 is in the books. Caleb Johnson, how are we?
Doing well, John.
It's another really good week in the K1 League. We had 3 teams enter the day that had one win, that all won. I should say 4 in total, but 3 of the 4 ended up winning a game, which has created some sort of interesting movement in the standings. The Lakers are 5-0. The Celtics fall to 0-5. Let's break it down game by game. Bulls take down the Celtics 56-41. Pretty low-scoring game.
Very low scoring.
Especially in that first half, just 25-23 at the half. What are your thoughts on the game that you called Bulls win their second straight?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big win for the Bulls. Kind of a weird feeling of a game because they had some guys show up late. I think a lot of their key guys didn't play probably to their standard. I mean, Benny Munoz only had 8 points on pretty low efficiency, which he's typically one of the most efficient guards in the league. So that was kind of strange. And then Seth kind of had a rather quiet game. Still at 10-10, but we expect more from Seth just in terms of numbers. But Bobby picked it up. Miguel Munoz, leading scorer for the Bulls, 13 points, played great. So I mean, he's been a really big improvement for them, and just off the bench. I think he started this game because of they didn't have enough guys, but he was really good. So yeah, just kind of a weird game, but big win for the Bulls to kind of muster up a scrappy Celtics team, and kind of the same thing we've been saying for the Celtics all year is just they just can't break through. They're close every game. There was a close, low scoring back and forth first half, and then second half the Bulls pulled away. Antonio Phillips picking up getting that fourth foul early in the second half really hurt them. Bulls went on a massive run almost immediately as soon as he went out of the game. So that definitely stunk for the Celtics. And then that second or third option just wasn't there. So unfortunately they fall to 0-5. But big win for the Bulls though.
Yeah, we talked about that on air. We were calling the game together. The decision to not only let Tull get his third foul in the first half was surprising, but all right, you leave him out there, you're in a competitive game, it happens. But then to start the second half, not only to start him on the court, but for him to not be aware enough to, not pick up that foul was pretty surprising. He then sat for 8 or 9 minutes, and that's exactly like you said, exactly when the game started to get out of hand for the Celtics. He was still fantastic, 7-11 from the field, 15 points, 8 rebounds. He is the second leading rebounder in the K1 League behind just Brandon Jones, who has only played 1 game. Mm-hmm. So basically the best rebounder in the league this year has been the guard, Antonio Phillips. Exactly. He's been huge for them, but just really no other contributions on offense. Dono Ellis, 0 points, 0 for 5. Gavin Webb, 5 points, only takes 3 shots. Josh Washington doesn't take a shot, no points, and there's just not been enough offense there. If you go back to the Bulls, what I find interesting for them, Bobby and I talked about this a little bit after their season a year ago. They're actually better with their big 3 doing less, which is interesting, in my opinion anyway. They're so much deeper, more balanced now that historically they could have never won a game where their top 3 guys didn't really score.
Yeah.
But Miguel Munoz leads them this week. Jonas Switzer was outstanding a week ago. Nick Crow in week 1, I think, had close to 30 points. They have really started to build a deep team, and it gives them a lot of options offensively. What I do find interesting, though, is that week 2 and week 3, they score basically 90 points in back-to-back weeks and lose. And then the past 2 weeks, they've struggled offensively, and they've stepped it up defensively to knock off the Pistons and the Celtics. Now, I know the Pistons and the Celtics are currently 11-12 in the standings, so it kind of makes you wonder what that's going to look like for the Bulls, and we'll know real quick as they take on the Suns next week. But
very tough matchup.
Very, very different game than they've played the last 2 weeks. But it's encouraging signs for the Bulls to be able to have their best players do less and still win. But obviously next week they're all going to have to step it up and play their best game if they want to hang with the Suns. Lakers defeated the Bucks 67-53 in the 1 p.m. game. You guys had just a brutal first half in lots of different ways. Couldn't get a whole lot to fall. The Lakers didn't really miss. It was the LJ Harris show. You ended up winning the second half by 1, but the deficit was what it was at halftime, and it was not only that, I think the game got to 20 to start the second half. LJ starts the half off with 4 threes in the face of Billy Baptist. You play well, I think, in my opinion, the last 15 minutes of the second half, so hopefully you take something from that. But even without Brian Hernandez and basically without Duckworth, who didn't score, The Lakers were just still a bit too much, and obviously not Billy Baptist's best game. Talk a little bit about what I'm sure for you is especially that first half disappointing game.
Yeah, it was. You're right. I mean, I think we didn't come out ready to play to start. Kind of a slow first half offensively, and kind of let them get in a rhythm. But I mean, there's not much else I can say about LJ's performance. I mean, he was playing like a man possessed. I mean, he definitely. I don't. I mean, I'm sure him and Billy know each other pretty well off the court. I'm sure they're buddies, but you could tell he played a little inspired. You know, just taking on the challenge of guarding him. And I thought he guarded Billy better than anyone I've seen in at least these last 2 years guard Billy. And then not only just to hold him to 10 points, but then also score 26 on him when Billy was guarding him and picking him up, you know, at the volleyball line, and he was still nailing deep threes. So LJ was fantastic. We had no answer for him, and they're a very tough matchup to guard, just defensively for any team, you know, with the depth they have. I mean, Dre Jr. hits some dagger threes. He was just electric, hard to guard. Tone played well. Kawani was just a hard matchup, and so with our size, we had a hard time guarding. And then, you know, some of our guys just didn't bring their best offensive game. You know, wish we would have saw a little more from Alex. I mean, I know he's a great player. I know he's capable of more, but you know, he only scored 6 points. And then, like you said, Billy was just uncharacteristic. So I think we'll be better, and we should be, you know, hopefully bounce back. But I think our team is still just trying to figure out our identity on offense, and you know, going to the post, going to the guards, running in transition. We're just trying to figure all that stuff out.
Yeah.
With some moving pieces. But yeah, credit to the Lakers because they're 5-0 for a reason. They're really good.
Yeah, certainly nothing to be ashamed of losing to Lakers by 14. They're averaging 80 plus points a game offensively. They've been absolutely fantastic. But yeah, 5 for 21 from Baptist. Obviously, that's tough to win when your best player does that. So it'll be interesting to see how other guys on your team can step it up outside of him. Be a good opportunity against the Warriors next week to get, you know, kind of get back in a rhythm offensively.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the Lakers, at the beginning of the year, we basically said, you know, was there enough ball to go around for them? And I think they've proved that for them there is. Statistically, certain guys are definitely taking a more of a backseat role this year.
Yeah.
Think of Tone Brooks, Andre Robertson Jr.
Definitely.
Guys that are certainly capable of more, but my perspective is they're all bought in. They love seemingly sharing the court, sharing the minutes, all of that, and they've bought into what they hope is a run at the number one seed, and they've done a really good job of that.
Yeah.
What's interesting is, for me now, the next sort of 5 games on their schedule. They'll play the 3-1 Rockets next week. They'll play the 4-1 Nets the week after that. They play the Heat, who are 2-4, but the Heat actually beat them a year ago, and one of the few teams that can match up with them athletically at least. And then week 9 they take on the Spurs, and week 10 they'll take on the Bulls. So they've played a couple good teams. You know, they've played the Lakers, they've played the Pistons, albeit shorthanded. I just said the Lakers, didn't I?
Yeah, they played the Suns.
The Lakers have played the Suns. Thank
very
you.
Shorthanded, that was
basically they did get the Suns and Pistons shorthanded, but they beat the Grizzlies, and quite frankly, that's the only game the Grizzlies haven't won. So that's a huge win for them. Mm-hmm. And then they beat you guys and Billy. So it's not like they haven't played anybody, but this is the stretch of their schedule now where we really see what they're made of. You're going to have been the league leading scorer next week in Tone Marshall. You know, they got about 4 different guys probably that are going to want to guard him. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, to go Rockets, Nets, Heat, and Spurs. Trust me, we'll know by the end of week 9 what the Lakers are made of. And if the Lakers come out of that even 2-2 in that stretch, and they're sitting at 7-2, they're still going to be favorites to be the number one seed. Yeah. Absolutely. So I think that Nets game, you circle that in week 7. 4 o'clock.
Classic, yeah, that's an instant classic.
It's going to be fun. Those teams split a year ago. I think the Lakers are obviously deeper than they were a season ago. So not to look too far ahead, you know, I like to do that. But and then of course matching up with the Bulls all the way in week 10 will be interesting to see too, because of the size that they have. However, we've talked all year about, the first thing I said was, is there enough ball to go around for them? And the second was, how do they compensate for the lack of size on the interior? Mm-hmm. And that has just not been an issue this year. They were shorthanded when they beat a Warriors team. They beat a Suns team that was bigger. Again, the Pistons had 4 guys, but the Pistons are bigger, and you guys were a lot bigger.
Yeah.
Hasn't affected them so far. So for all of the reasons we gave that maybe it wouldn't work, we haven't seen that yet. So kudos to them. When you start 5-0, I mean, you put yourself in a position where if you play 500 ball, you still could potentially be the number 1 seed. So kudos to the 5-0 Lakers, and just be interested to see what they're able to do against some of these good teams down the stretch. Pistons get throttled by the Suns. 114-60 was the final. The game was 5-on-4 till halftime. Then it was 5-on-5, and it was actually the second half was arguably just as bad, if not worse, considering they did have 5 guys there. All I'll say for the Pistons, Mark Connor, 25 points, 12 of 23. He's been by far their most consistent player. He's been there every week. He's been locked in. He is a really skilled scorer.
Yeah, very
excited
good
to see him go up against Dennis Koger next week. We'll talk about that. Let's more maybe focus on the Suns here. The Suns have a lot of guys on their team. They're very deep. They just keep bringing guys out of the woodworks. Derek Dale with a casual 13, 10, and 5, and what was, as we joked about on air, maybe 50% effort. You're not even convinced of that.
No, I think it was less.
114 points. This is by far the most ridiculous stat line I've ever seen from 3. 21
I was gonna start with
of
that,
29.
yeah.
Talk about what the Suns did on Sunday.
I mean, their shooting percentage is almost impossible. I mean, 60% from the field. And again, they had 4. It was 4-on-5 for the first half, but 21 for 29, 72% from 3. I mean, I've never heard of a stat like that at any level. Even college, high school, NBA. I mean, even the best shooting teams, 50% is exceptional, but 72% is elite. Kavos 7 for 7 from 3, Jameer Hines 7 of 10 from 3, John Oliver 2 for 4, Vashawn Sims 3 for 3. So, I mean, honestly, on the air, I don't even remember it being that bad. I think they made a lot of shots, but to go 70% is insane. So, I mean, you can.
Those look like free throw numbers.
Yeah, I mean, you can credit the Pistons only having 4 guys, but the Suns still had to show up, play the game, and make shots, and they did, and they just destroyed them.
Yeah, there's a lot there, but when these are the guys that the Suns have there, again, still no Jared Johnson, no Phil Andrade. This team it's different than the Lakers. It's a different type of depth, but you could argue they're the deepest team in the league. And again, Vashawn continues to give them a whole new dimension. How about Jameer Hines being a last-second find, and I think a really good fit for them.
Perfect fit. They kind of needed shooting after last year, and he provides that.
Yeah, he's super unselfish. He plays hard. He's just a really good fit for them. I'm glad he was able to get on a team this year. So Suns are 2-3. I said last week I'm not going to put a number on it, but I'll be curious to see if this team gets hot down the stretch like they did a year ago. They still play the Spurs, but the Suns have had an absolute gauntlet of a schedule. The Suns have already played the Lakers and the Nets and the Bucks and the Pistons. I mean, the Suns have played a really and the Grizzlies. So no one's as battle tested as the Suns, and it looks like starting to get things figured out. So probably the wrong time of the year to be playing them. And that's just how they're going to be. I think they're going to be there in the mix. What a strange 3 o'clock game we had. Tale of two halves. The Spurs, shorthanded albeit, up 39-20 at the break. Heat could not do anything. And then the Heat did what they do in the second half. They capitalized on 18 Spurs turnovers. They had several double-digit steals of their own. They ran a little bit. They made layups. They got some offensive rebounds. And they out-rebounded the Spurs, even though the Spurs had John Martin, Dennis Koger, and Trey Johnson. Is it safe to say this could be what I would classify maybe a season-saving win for the Heat?
That's exactly what I was going to say, John. It took the words right out of my mouth. But, yeah, I mean, the Heat played 2 games on Sunday, and, you go 0-2, you drop to 1-5, your season looks like it's in shambles. 2-4 is still not great, but I think Trey Anthony would definitely take that after after a huge win against the Spurs. Something about the Spurs and Heat sparks the best out of the Heat because they played fantastic. I wasn't able to watch the second half, but which is funny because I left and they were up 19 points, and I'm like, okay, this is another classic Spurs win. They look great. The defense was fantastic, but man, a tale of two halves is right. The Spurs are definitely missing their depth, definitely missing some of their guards. Not having Chris and Ben Green, I think, hurt, and then honestly Dustin not being there 2 straight weeks. Their shooting numbers aren't quite where they should be either. I mean, 6 for 20 is nothing to, it's not horrible, but it's also not fantastic either. They just need some shooters to spread the floor. But yeah, I mean, huge win for the Heat, and the Spurs are looking, pretty beatable this year. I mean, would you argue that statement, John?
No, you're right. 6 for 20 is nothing to sneeze at, but the concern is 18 turnovers, and I mean, Dustin Renaissance and Chris Green have played on back-to-back championship teams, and Ben Green's a collegiate level player. That's what they're missing right now. And that's no offense to the guys that they have. It adds a whole other level of depth. It's hard to play the Heat with 6 guys.
It is.
Guys are going to be tired.
Distract me.
John Martin basically plays the whole game, and he's been having some back issues. I mean, credit to them for having the first half that they did, even with Trey Johnson, kind of showing up late. But the Spurs are taking no moral victories in what has been an uncharacteristic 5 weeks from them. If they can get either or both of the Green brothers back, I expect, similar to the Suns, them to go on a little bit of a run here. But you can't turn the ball over 18 times and win very often, let alone against the Heat. Probably the worst team to do it against, maybe the Heat or the Lakers. And they did that, and kudos to the Heat for capitalizing. I'll say this about the Heat. Terrell Hendricks probably, almost assuredly, was really frustrated with his performance in both games on Sunday. He had 13 points and 8 rebounds in this game, which for most people is a pretty good game. He was still tied for their leading scorer, and he was their leading rebounder. It's not like he had a bad game per se. Now he's not scoring 25 points anymore like he used to be, but similar to what I said about the Bulls earlier, this is the deepest Heat team, in my opinion, that they've had. Lamarius Lillard adding another dimension. Jacquees Springer, CJ Link's a really good fit. I just think that this Heat team now has a lot of weapons. They're really deep, and even though Hendricks, didn't necessarily play his best game in this, if they can beat the Spurs, and Hendricks only has 13 points on 5 made field goals, that's, in my opinion, spells really good things for the Heat. So I equate the Heat and the Bulls, put them in very similar categories right now, where a lot of their guys are stepping up that wouldn't have traditionally been in their sort of scoring rotations in years past. And I think the Heat, I genuinely believe the Heat are as deep as any team in the league. They have the athletes, they have the skill, they have the talent. It's just, can they put it together for a whole game? Quite frankly, they didn't against the Spurs. They just did it in the second half really well, and that was still enough to win. So I think if the Heat can keep it together, there is no team in this league that they can't beat. But they as well have some tough games left still. So we'll see what they're made of. I think they could still make a run at getting back to maybe finishing the year at 5-6. I could see them still winning 3 or 4 games that are left on their schedule, but they do still have to play the Lakers and the Suns, so it's going to be tough. But what a win from the Heat. I think this was probably the biggest win of the day. I would say was this game here. Nets Warriors in the game of the day. What a first half it was. The Warriors were up 29-27. Tyrese Mosley came out firing. He finished 5 of 7 from 3. Again, only 7 shots from deep. I think so. You lose McLawrence in the first half to the Nets, and then the Warriors lose Latrell there towards the end of the first half. And I think that was a huge blow to them. Well, I don't think that. I know that it was. The game was never the same after that. And they're outscored by 17 points in the second half, and so it showed the value that Latrell, I think, offers this team. But what a comprehensive performance as everybody for the Nets scored, and they shared the ball well. I know they only have 7 assists, but they just played a little bit more together than the Warriors did, especially once Latrell was out. So talk about this one, and the Nets are 4-1. They just keep doing nothing but winning.
Yeah, I mean, they're a tough out. Martavis Laster, huge performance, 28 points. The thing about Martavis is he's always so efficient too. He's 10 for 17, 58% from the field for a guard is just exceptional. So he brought his A game when Mook went out. I mean, Sammy only had 6 points, 0 for 4 from 3, kind of an uncharacteristic bad game from him. I think Ronnie Jackson. I think he's steady as always. He'll be an awesome 6-man, and just a good team player. So I think huge performance from Martavis is kind of the standout. But I mean, like you said, like the Warriors, I think I've been saying it all year on the podcast and when calling their games. I think Latrell has been one of, if not the top 5 players in the league. I mean, he's so important to what they do each week. Because Tyree just quite honestly hasn't played. I mean, he had a great game this week, but he hasn't played maybe up to his standard. So Latrell's been carrying them on a lot of these games and a lot of their performances, and not having him definitely, I think, kind of hindered their run, the momentum they had in the first half. And but this also has happened before to the Warriors, where they've been up and in the first half, and then kind of faded away in the second half. So. We've seen it before, but I mean, Warriors 2-3, Nets 4-1, huge win for them, and they just keep staying in that top 4 teams.
Yeah, it felt like at halftime. Well, I should say, felt like going towards halftime. Had the Warriors found a way to win that game, they would have been tied with the Nets and had the tiebreaker on them, and it would have felt like the Warriors with wins over the Nets and the Spurs and having identical records. I think that would have given us a much different feeling than it has now. Mm-hmm. You're right. Latrell's huge to them. Obviously, Tyree is too, and so is Quan. But they're also struggling to get production outside of those 3. Let's take away, for example, Tyree's performance on Sunday. They shoot 3 of 11 from 3, and there hasn't been the offensive production outside of those 2, except for Quan's really solid game against the Heat in week 2. So they're going to have to figure out how they can continue to utilize those guys and get them in the best positions to score. But this, to me, talks, again, it speaks to the depth that the Nets have. Ronnie Jackson basically ended the game. He had that layup that they forced a steal off the inbounds pass, drains that 3 in the corner. That pretty much ended the game there in the second half, that little run that they had. And no Lonzel Mason, who's out with an injury, and basically no Mook Lawrence, and they still run away from the Warriors. So they're similar to the Lakers in that they don't have the most size. They don't have that true big man, but they have found a way to continue to win without that. And they are so consistent.
Everyone shows.
Every week everyone
shows
there.
up. Like, it's not a week where you won't see Martavis Laster or Sammy Hines or Chills Wills.
Well, ironically, the one week you didn't, they lose to the Rockets, and it shows. So
in a game they still probably should have won. So.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, they are the definition of consistency. If you're looking for a model to copy to have success in the K1 Men's League, go get dinner with Coach Chills and ask him what his secret sauce is, because they have just been so consistent, and it's never a surprise when the Nets play well for 40 minutes. So they're 4-1. What a win from them. And how about another 4-1 team? These Grizzlies, man. Walt Hudson is on cloud 9 right now. They
have a squad this year.
They sure do. 32-21. The Heat were winning this game. 32-21. And then the Heat sort of fell asleep at the end of the first half. The Grizzlies closed it on a 5-0 run. You're still thinking, okay, we just beat the Spurs. We're up 6. And then the second half was just really, really ugly for the Heat. They resorted to sort of some old ways and some bad habits, and the 3 guys, their big 3, like their biggest 3 guys, Chad White, Chris White, and Rich Kirk. That's 20, 24, and 18 points respectively.
It's hard to beat.
It's 62 of their 73 points. They only had 5 guys score, and 3 of them had 62 points. The Heat aren't a small team, but they could not do anything. No answers for those 3 guys on the inside. And those shooting percentages are ridiculous. 8 of 12, 12 of 17, and 9 for 13 from the field. The Grizzlies were unstoppable, those 3 on the inside. So many points in the paint. The Grizzlies are 4-1. You and I did not expect that coming into the season either. Kudos to them. What a win.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch this one again. I was out of the gym, but looking at the box score, Chad and Chris White are just about as dynamic as a duo as we'll see. The fact that they're brothers just makes it even better. But I mean, Chad with 20, 11, and 5, fantastic game. Chris, I think there was some doubts after the first week he showed up, but there's no doubts anymore. He's one of, if not the best big men in the league. 24 and 6 on super efficient production. Really, everyone from the Grizzlies, super efficient production. 57%, basically 58% if you round up, percent from the field. Their only weakness, I would say, maybe is the 3-point shooting. Chad was good, but for the rest of the team, actually, Chad had their only 3 makes. The rest of the team was 0 for 10. So, I know Dan Mitchell is a great shooter. DeMarcus Wilson's a good shooter. They can shoot. They maybe didn't bring it this game, but they're a dangerous team, man. And if they keep playing like this, I think you give a team like this, a scrappy team with good talent, confidence, and that's a dangerous combination. Because they have confidence, they don't fear anybody, and their only losses against the 5-0 Lakers in a game that they competed for basically the whole game. So
7-point game.
So credit the Grizzlies; they're fantastic. Walt, you're gonna be smiling listening to this podcast because I just can't say enough good things about your team. Tough day for the Heat. I mean, you never want to have a doubleheader. We've kind of eliminated those in the K1 over the last couple of years, but a tough doubleheader, get a good win, and like you said, up 6 at halftime. Got to feel pretty good about that going into half, but second half probably just ran out of gas. CJ didn't bring his best performance. Jacquees didn't bring his best performance. So a good 1-1 day, all things considered for the Heat, but some definitely good things moving forward for them as well.
Yeah, definitely a tale of 2 games and a tale of 2 halves. The first half against the Spurs was really rough. First half against the Grizzlies was fantastic, and then they sort of flipped the script in both games and sort of opposite performances in the halves. But I can't say enough good things like you said about the Grizzlies. If there is a team with some size that can limit the White brothers and Rich, what's going to be interesting to see is where does production come from on the around the perimeter. I believe it was Mitchell who had 15 a week ago.
Yeah, very capable shooter.
Back in that week 1 win, the Grizzlies knocked down a bunch of threes against the Suns, who didn't do a great job guarding the perimeter, and the Grizzlies took advantage of it. So again, their MO might not be lighting you up from deep, but they've done it when they needed to. They hit 8 in that win in the first week when Jordan Kirk had 19 points, and I think they got a lot of guys that know their role and know what they need to do, and kudos to them. So just kind of quickly hit these games. Week 6, so I just tend to notice these things. I don't know if anyone else will. Now you won't. You'll have to notice it once I point it out. You have 4 straight games to start the day with teams playing that have a combined 4 wins. What does that mean? I don't know. Maybe we'll get some even games. I'm not sure. Perhaps that won't be the 12 o'clock game where I think the Nets are massive favorites against the Celtics.
Yeah.
Do the Celtics have any chance in this game?
No. Just being honest. I mean, I love the Nets team. Maybe if one of their guys doesn't show up. I mean, when Sammy and Martavis are both there, I mean, they're the best team in the league, or one of the best teams in the league, if not the best. So Celtics are going to be playing from behind most of the game. So hopefully Townsend and Phillips can show up and carry him.
Yeah, I think JT is due for a breakout game. Haven't had it yet this year, and I know he's been as frustrated as anyone, and it's not for a lack of work. He was in the gym getting up some shots this past week. Things are just not clicking. You know that feeling sometimes. It's like that, and it's really frustrating, and it doesn't help when the schedule is as challenging as it is. Again, I think their first 2 games were against 2 teams that they arguably matched up really, really well against, and it's just a gauntlet of a stretch of their schedule. Mm-hmm. Nets, Suns, Bucks, Heat, Warriors, Lakers. I mean, there's no relief coming. So we'll see if JT can step it up and provide them some more offense alongside Antonio. But I think, you're right, the Nets will be big favorites. The Spurs-Pistons in an intriguing 1 o'clock game. We're just at the point, I think, we talked about this on air, we don't know who's going to be there for the Pistons, if anyone, other than Mark Connor and probably AP. So it's really hard to predict what they're capable of because we don't really know.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure they know at this point.
I mean, the thing I'll say is until I see their full roster show up and compete against a top-level team, I'm not sold on the Pistons. Their only win this year was against the Celtics. So, again, they beat the 0-5 team. So until they have a full roster and compete against a top-level team that has a winning record, I'm not sold on them. Again, Mark Connor's great, and some of the other guys were pretty good, but I think I have the Spurs in this one.
Yeah, until we see that, it's all been speculation at this point. I hope we see it against the Spurs. I hope we see it every week from here on out. But definitely been some red flags there, and I feel for Coach AP as he tries to work through that. But the Spurs, you talked about it. If they can get the Green brothers back and Dustin Renowitz, I think we're going to start to see more of a vintage Spurs team. We saw what they did against the Rockets, who, looking back, the Rockets maybe are a better team than we realized when they played the Spurs in week 2.
Mm-hmm.
The Spurs ran away in that second half. They were just deeper, bigger, and better. So Spurs a chance to get to 4 wins here and kind of keep pace. They're in solo 5th, which feels weird for them, kind of a weird place for them to be, but they still have some opportunities on their schedule. They still play all 4 teams that are ahead of them in the standings, so don't count out the Spurs just yet. That's right. Don't count them out just yet. Back-to-back 2 and 3 matchups. The Bucks are 2 and 3. The Warriors are 2 and 3 in the 2:00 game. You and I haven't been around the area as long as some of the people that will listen to this and will play. There's kind of a little bit of a history, a fun rivalry, let's say, between Billy and Tyree. It would be fun to get to see that on Sunday. 2 of the best scorers in the league history that we've been fortunate enough to watch play. And then former teammates at KCC, if you didn't know, Alex Malinich and Latrell Tidwell will get a chance to go at it down low. Talk about some of the keys to success in this one. What I'll say before that, the Bucks have lost 3 in a row and the Warriors have lost 2 in a row. Both you guys are really, really, really going to feel good if you can win a game here, and the other is going to be really frustrated heading into Week 7.
Yeah, not quite desperation mode for either team yet. I mean, both talented teams, both a lot of wins potentially in the table, but both teams need a win. And I think for us, for the Bucks, I think trying to find an identity, getting some of our guys back ready to go, getting Alex and Billy and CC going again. I think running the floor is going to be huge. I think we have potentially the youth and the speed factor are advantage against them. So I'm excited to see our team push that tempo and run. But like you said, when Latrell and Tyree are both on their A games, they're a hard team to beat. So got to limit those guys and hopefully control the glass as best we can.
Absolutely. Another pair of 2 and 3 teams in the 3:00 game, Suns and the Bulls. Color-wise, this is my least favorite matchup of the year, orange versus red.
And red, no thank you.
Good old clashing of the colors. The Bulls do have the size that the Suns do, but the question is going to be, do they have the outside shooting? Benny Munoz is going to have to play better than he's been playing. Seth Johnson needs to play better. I think the Bulls collectively need to play better, but they also have defended really well the last 2 weeks. I expect this to be a physical game. What do the Bulls have to do to upset the Suns in this one?
Yeah, I think this is kind of one of the sneakier games of the week. I think, I mean, maybe you know better than I do, but I mean, if Vashon is there, I think the Suns are my favorites, and I think they probably have a slight edge. If Vashon's not there, I think the Bulls can win this game. I really do. I think this could be my upset pick. Again, depending on who shows up, because I think that the Suns, when their roster's fully there, they're one of the best teams in the league, but it hasn't been consistently there yet. So I think, Kavos, if you're listening to this, I mean, try and get your full squad there. Obviously, you know that, but this could be a really sneaky game for the Suns. I think the Bulls have been hungry for some wins. They've been close against some top teams, and I think they're playing really well right now. So this could be a sneaky game. I think it's even, but if Vashon's there, I make it the slight edge to the Suns.
Feels like the Bulls have lacked a signature win really for a while, since they upset the Lakers in the quarterfinals 2 years ago in the fall 21 postseason tournament to make the semis. Kind of feels like since then they've lacked a signature win like this. A year ago they played the Suns, and that was Jared Johnson's debut, and he absolutely torched them for something like 37 points, and he won Player of the Week. So they'll be having nightmares if they see Jared back on the court. But the Suns are probably more talented, but I think some teams do underestimate the Bulls and how deep and how physical they are. So all comes down to personnel, like we've talked about, but this could be a really good game. This would be a signature win for the Bulls if they could pull it off. If they don't, the Suns train will just keep on rolling, and that'll be...
Last thing I'll say on this game is I'm excited to watch Nick Crow versus Kavos, Ryan play. 2 guys who are big inside, strong, physical, love contact, don't care about how physical the other person's playing. I mean, this could be a very fun, some fireworks inside, so watch out for those 2 guys going head-to-head. I think it could be a fun one.
Couldn't agree more. Last two games of the day feature the Rockets. If we don't know what the Rockets are made of yet, we will know
Definitely find
by
out.
about 5:55 p.m. on this coming Sunday. Tone Marshall is your league leading scorer so far. Hasn't necessarily had a ton of help around him, but he's had very timely help, I think is the way I would say it. Tanner Ribby and Harry Marshall in week 3. I should say, sorry, week 4.
Mm-hmm. Alex Thorson
first couple weeks. Had Hunter Jacobs in there, and that upset win over the Nets. I don't necessarily think the Rockets are favorites in either of these games, but they're arguably going to have the best player on the court in Tone Marshall. But in some ways, it feels like the Lakers have several different versions of Tone on their team to throw at him. So I think I'm not sure what. I mean, you probably want to play the Lakers first, but I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
They're just different matchups. The Lakers are smaller and faster. The Grizzlies aren't necessarily slow, but they're going to bring that size at you and that physicality in the second game. With the White brothers, this is a brutal doubleheader. I don't think you could play a tougher doubleheader. What would it take for the Rockets to win either of these games outside of Tone Marshall having a really big day?
I think the first thing is going to be depth. They like Antonio. I'm sure he already has, but he's got to be recruiting all of his guys to show. If they have 6 guys, it is going to be a long afternoon for the Rockets because they're probably going to go 0-2. But if they have 8, 9, maybe even 10 guys, and Harry's there, Ribby's there, I mean, they have a shot, I think, in both these games. I mean, Tone, when you have the best player on the floor, it's just that much of an impact. Lakers are going to be tough, and they're going to throw bodies at him, but I still think the Rockets can beat the Lakers if they play well enough. I mean, I've played the Lakers, both teams firsthand, and they both are really good. And I think if they have the depth, they can beat the Grizzlies. We've talked about their depth and how well they've been playing, but the Rockets are no joke, and they're a tough team to play against and to prepare for because they have, if Thorson's there, if they have like 6 or 7 guys who played college basketball and who have high IQs and are smart and like pick apart a defense. Like I saw it firsthand. So if they have those guys there and they have the depth to keep their guys fresh for both games, they can definitely win that second game. But it's all going to depend on who Tone gets to show and how they show up in both games.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing the Rockets will do is they'll make you beat them on their terms, and if you do that, you tip your cap like the Spurs did when they ran out of gas. But if the Rockets don't have more than 6 guys, I think that's going to be tough in a doubleheader like this. So we'll see lots of movement in the standings potentially. You have the Lakers, the Nets, the Rockets, the Grizzlies, all potentially leaving Sunday in first place. So could be some movement in the standings. Caleb, appreciate you. Thanks for doing the podcast as always. A lot to look forward to coming up in week 6. So we'll be with you on the 25th, starting at noon with the Celtics and the Nets. See if the Celtics. We'll see if the Celtics can upset the Nets and pick up their first win of the season, culminating with 2 big games for the Rockets at the end of the day. So thank you, Caleb, for joining us.
It's going to be a great week of K1. Not going to want to miss it.
Absolutely. We'll be back with you guys next week. Hope everybody has a great week, and we'll talk to you then.